You guys are answering those questions. I'm going to get started. We're just after 11 here, and we have probably quite a bit to go through between Lara and I, so just so we can try and keep on track with timing. Welcome everyone to this webinar on baby sleep questions, and then also talking about the importance of transitional movements. So a really quick intro. I can introduce myself first, and then Lara, I'll pass it over to you. My name is Maegan Mack, and I am a physiotherapist and the owner of Playworks Physio. I went to physio school at UBC, and I've been working with kids, so in pediatrics for the past 6 years within private clinics, and then also through some child development centers. And when I'm not working, I am busy chasing around my 1-year-old. Lara, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, awesome. So I'm Lara Rabb. I noticed that my name is spelled correctly there, but it's not spelled correctly in my little video box. So if you're Googling me later, just so you know, it's 2 B's. I'm the owner of Heavy Eyes, Happy Hearts Sleep Consulting. I live in the greater Vancouver area with my partner and my 2 kids. My oldest is 7 years old and my youngest is almost 4. I started Heavy Eyes, Happy Hearts when my oldest was 1. So I've been doing this for almost 6 years now, which is hard to believe for me and just wild. I've met in that time hundreds, probably thousands actually, of families at this point who have struggled with their children's sleep, and we've worked together to overcome those different challenges that they face. I am currently pursuing my master's in counseling psychology to better serve the families that I work with, and I am looking forward to finishing that next July. It's like a 1.5 years done, year to go, so just powering through. Thank you, Maegan, for having me. I'm happy to be here to chat about sleep.
Awesome, thanks so much. So I'm just going to end this poll. We have a pretty good breakdown between 0 to 3, 4 to 6, and 7 to 9. I'm going to show you those results really quickly.
A few expecting people too. Cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
Smart.
Yes, very smart. I wish I learned more before Cohen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so just to let everyone know that this is being recorded. So if you want to check back, or if you look back at anything later, you can check back at the link and I will send that out after the presentation. And this is what today's goals are. So you're going to get the answers on the top baby sleep questions that Lara gets. I'm going to talk about what transitional movements are, why they're important, and then what to do when baby learns to roll and then gets woken up in the night. And Lara, you probably have some input on that one too.
Yeah, sure. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about
that. Okay, here we go. So what is pediatric physio? So I often get asked, like, what do you guys do with kids and like even babies? And so physios in general are movement specialists, and pediatric physios are movement specialists just for kids. So we've had our hands on a lot of little bodies, which are quite different than adult bodies. Pediatric physios know what typical development looks like, and what sorts of things like pains, aches and pains and injuries that kids are more prone to. So why we see babies for physio most often are for torticollis, so babies who have tightness in their neck. So that results in them only being able to look. They prefer looking in one direction more than the other. Parents may also have concerns about baby's head shape. So they may notice a flat spot on one side or the back of baby's head. We also do motor milestone check-in. So this is where parents will bring baby in and we'll take a look and see where they are for their age to see if there are certain things that they can be working on to help with their next skill that they're going to be achieving, and then also let parents know what to be expecting next. And we find that first-time parents really are looking for ways to purposefully play with their baby and also to learn about information from a reliable source. And so they find these motor milestone check-ins really helpful. A lot of families have extended benefits through work, which cover physio. And so we get families that tend to come in every so often just to have a check-in and get ideas for supporting healthy development and have their questions answered. So kind of like how you would go to the dentist every 6 months. Sometimes people will come in with their babies to check in every so often just to see what they can be working on next. So our clinic, Playworks Physio, is located in Port Moody, BC, and we've been there for just over 2 years now. But if you're not in that area, you will be pleased to know that since COVID and the pandemic stuff, we have now launched virtual physio sessions. So we are able to see kids across Canada. And we treat all kids, not just babies, for sports injuries, strains, growing pains, different running patterns. So all sorts of different stuff. Okay, so what are transitional movements? So type into the chat, give me, just write in yes if you attended the motor milestone webinar that we did earlier in May. So some of this might be a bit of a repeat for you, but by now your babe is at a little bit of a different age group, so they may be working on a new transition. So a transitional movement is one that helps baby get from one position to another, and oftentimes it involves rotation. So I listed some examples. So the most common ones that we see are like rolling. So this can be from back to tummy, tummy to back, moving from their tummy into sitting, or going the other way, so sitting onto their tummy. And then a little bit later on when they are closer to getting into crawling, so they'll move from their tummy onto their hands and knees, and then eventually go from sitting into standing. So these are all different transitional movements because they're helping baby get from one position into another. And so these are all really important and at different stages and ages. So this is a video you can see here. So of going tummy into sitting. So he has to rotate, push with his arms and get up into sitting. And I'll play that one more time just so you can see that. So there he's on his tummy. He has to push up over that leg, use those arms, and then get up. And you can see he's having to work those core muscles quite a bit too to get up into sitting. Okay, so why are they so important? These movements are super, super important because they ensure that baby can move in between positions and not get stuck in any one of them. So one thing that we often hear is the parents coming in with babies who they're like, oh, my baby's a really good sitter. They can sit really well, but they get stuck here. So they'll cry when they want to get out of sitting, and then they'll also fuss because they know they want to be in sitting if they're on their back or on their tummy. And so this is like one of the most common areas where we see for transitional movements is that babies get stuck in sitting and they can't get into or out of this. And so transitions require rotation through baby's trunk. And like with babies, we often think, oh, it's just a skill right now while they're this age. But the interesting thing with transitional movements is that it's a skill and a movement that will translate into many other activities as baby gets older. So when you think about activities, even just thinking about sports activities, so I listed like golf, hockey, baseball, soccer, these all require rotation through that trunk. And so this movement pattern is something that starts developing when they're babies. So, and it starts with these transitional movements. So like I mentioned earlier, transitional movements require core strength and rotation through their trunk. It also takes arm strength depending on which movement they're working on, and then lots of practice. So you'll find that babies will attempt to be mastering these skills, and they may not be getting them all right at once, but it just takes tons of practice, and eventually they do get them. One thing that you can do is when you want to get your baby into sitting or out of sitting, I challenge you to try and help them get there rather than just picking them up and plopping them onto their bum. And then if you're not sure about how to help facilitate this movement, you can always try doing it yourself. So you can lie on your tummy and then see how you get into sitting. And that's the same type of way that you'd be helping baby get onto their bum as well. And then, so if babies don't get this component of moving, they often become stuck in sitting, and then they can start bum scooting instead of crawling. So that's what we would see if we didn't teach baby how to do the transitional movement. A baby who was stuck and couldn't get off their bum, they would probably they'd still move, but they may just not actually rotate and get into that crawling position. Give me a yes into the chat if you're following, and I'll just so I know I'm not going too fast here. Okay, and I'm just gonna play this video. This is a slow motion video of going from sitting to tummy. So opposite of the last one. So here you can see he's having to rotate over that leg and then onto his arms, and then he can crawl away. And so getting that movement over top of that left leg of his, turning through his trunk, planting his hands, and then going. So this is why a movement like this requires that arm and core strength. Okay, so how to encourage transitional movements. So for the younger kiddos in the group, I saw that there was quite a few in the 0 to 3 month range, and even like 4 to 6. With rolling, when you're doing tummy time or if you're doing playtime on their back, I would encourage you guys to try and help them between positions. So just like I mentioned earlier with sitting, so help roll from their back onto their tummy if you're going to be doing tummy time, and then vice versa too. If they're needing a break from tummy time and you're going to go onto their back, help them roll there rather than just picking them up. And this just shows them, even if it's a bit early for them to actually be doing it on their own, it shows them that like how eventually the movement will be. So yeah, you can start practicing that. And then the other thing with this is to practice going both directions. So make sure you're going both to their left and to their right. What I find is, like I even got caught in this too, was because I'm right-handed, I would always tend to use my right hand to help him. And so I practice going that direction more. So practice going both. With sitting to 4-point, you can see this picture here. So if you have baby sitting in between your legs and then you put a toy on the outside of your legs, this will encourage them to kind of rotate and get their hands over top of your leg into that side sit position. And this is kind of the precursor to being able to go from sitting onto hands and knees fully by themselves. So this is a really nice one that you can do when you're playing with babe. Just practice going both directions, like I mentioned for the rolling. And let's see what else is here. So another thing that can help with encouraging these transitional movements is having your play areas with different levels. So this helps with different transitions, especially once your baby can sit. So with things at different heights, it can encourage them from going to the floor, to sitting, to high kneeling, and then eventually to standing. But you can have toys on the floor. You can remove, here I removed a couch cushion, put some stuff here. And then once they're actually standing, you can even put stuff like higher up. So just having different levels of play is really helpful to encourage these different movements. Okay, so now we get into, now your baby can roll, and then they start waking themselves up at night. Give me a yes into the chat if you've had this happen already, and just so I know we can maybe see what's worked for you. Not yet. Oh, yeah, Jody has. Okay, yeah. So what I find that helps from the physio standpoint in helping with this is that so parents will come in, we'll be seeing a family, and then they'll say, oh my goodness, my baby just learned to roll, and now they'll roll in their sleep onto their tummy. So usually babies will go from back to tummy in the night, and this will wake them up, and then parents are all stressed because now baby's waking up in the night because they've rolled, so they don't know what to do. And so one thing that we encourage is to practice this skill when they're awake of going back from tummy to back, or whichever, if it's the opposite, so that they're confident in knowing how to do it during waking hours. And then usually this translates within like a couple nights of them being able to do it in their sleep. And so one way to do this is, like I mentioned earlier, is like if you're playing on doing floor time or tummy time, practice rolling back and forth to get them in and out of the position so that they can start to figure out the motor plan and not get stuck into any of these positions. And so, yeah, this is what we've had the most success with, is actually getting baby confident with this skill while they're awake. And then they usually are able to do this at night. Lara, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. I usually recommend similar, just practicing this skill as much as possible when baby is awake. And I usually find that this transition happens really quickly. So, with a lot of things in parenting, with how rapidly our children are developing and progressing, it feels like, oh, this is going to happen every night for weeks and weeks and months and months. It's not going to. It's usually very quick, within 3 to 4 days, especially if you're practicing during the day, that baby is no longer doing this at night. The other question I often get that comes along with this one is, well, my baby can roll themselves onto their tummy now, and they're actually preferring to sleep on their tummy. So is it okay for me to let them continue sleeping on their tummy, or should I be flipping them back onto their backs? And then in correspondence with that question, also being asked, okay, well, now their preference is for tummy sleep. Is it okay to put them down on their tummy at the start of the night, even though, we're told back to sleep is the way to go? So my recommendation, or what I have learned through my different certifications, is that when we should always put a child down on their back to sleep, regardless of what they can or cannot do. But if they roll onto their tummy and continue to sleep on their tummy, and they've done that transitional movement on their own, then it's okay to let them continue to sleep that way, because they're strong enough to get, be in that position and get into that position. It's something that's happened naturally, and therefore it's probably safe for them to sleep that way. And I don't know, Maegan, if you've heard any differently than that, but also to continue putting them down on their back when you place them into their sleep space is what I would recommend.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Yeah, the big thing for us with babies sleeping on their tummy is, well, one, if they can get there on their own, then that shows that they're in developmentally appropriate for that. But then also in terms of head control, that when they're doing tummy time, that they're actually able to lift and turn their head from one side to the other, just because then that will show that they have the strength to do that and won't get stuck like face down.
Yeah,
so that's a strength wise one.
Cool.
So if you guys have any questions about transitional movements, type them into the Q&A box. I can try to answer them now. And then I'll just go over my last couple slides while you guys are thinking of any questions for you. So when to see a pediatric physio or when to see a physio is when you think that baby is lacking a variety of movements. So if they don't have a lot of random or spontaneous movements, or they may move one side of their body more than the other, babies who get stuck in one position. So like I mentioned before, if baby is getting stuck in sitting and you need some tips and specific things to work on to help learn those transitional movements. Babies who like to be on their back and hate tummy time, it's always helpful to get some ideas specific to your baby, and we can help kind of improve baby's tolerance for tummy time. If they're not rolling, or if you think they're missing some milestones, it's always a good thing to check in earlier than later, because babies can pick things up really quickly. So it may just even be one session where you learn a couple of things to implement during playtime. If you notice that baby's looking in one direction more than another, this could be indicative of torticollis, like I mentioned at the start. And then, like I said earlier, is a general motor milestone check-in to get ideas. So we find that 3 to 4 months is a great time. It's kind of just on the verge before they're hitting a whole bunch of new skills. And so this just makes sure that they've kind of achieved everything up until that point, and then learning what to expect next. And then same thing at 6 months and 10 months. So those are kind of big age milestones for new skill acquisition. So that's when we find the general milestone checkup to be best. So I see a couple of questions here. When is a good time to start tummy time in infants? So you can start tummy time right from day one. And so tummy time doesn't have to be just like face down on a cold hard floor. Tummy time is really anything away from vertical, and this can be on you, it can be on a soft surface, it can be at different angles. So the lower down baby is, the harder it's going to be for them, because they have to lift their head up way more against gravity, whereas if they're at a bit of an angle, it's a bit easy and more comfortable for them. So you can always start at a bit of an angle and kind of adjust. And this is the same if they're lying on your chest. You can play with your angle, and then that will make it easier or more challenging for baby. When we help baby roll, does it matter if their arm is up by their head or down by their side? So this is a great question. So when you're helping baby to roll, you want to make sure that either their arms are tucked underneath their chest or above by their ear. If their arm's out by the side, then they won't actually be able to roll over that arm. So either tucked in or up. I find that usually when you're helping baby, it's easier to have them tucked. Like it's easier to scoop their arms under. They'll usually like fight or like pull their arm away if you pull it up. So I have the most success by that position. And this is mostly for rolling from tummy to back. And then when you're going from back to tummy, their arm position can kind of vary. They'll get their arms under them once they flip onto their tummy. My baby just napped. He slept for 1.5 hours and just woke himself up crying. I tried to help him learn during the day, but he's not very good at it. So Rosa, are you saying that he woke up because of, or your baby woke up because of rolling? Or you think he woke up crying because of rolling? Yeah. Is 1.5 hours a short nap for him then? Sorry, I'm just getting clarification if this is more for me or for Lara. Sarah, do you recommend any apps that show the timing of motor milestones and what to expect? Sarah, we did a motor milestone webinar. I'll send the link out to that after this, just so that you can go back and watch it, and we go through like a specific age breakdown. And then in terms of apps, I haven't found one specifically for gross motor skills that I recommend. I have looked at Wonder Weeks before, and they do talk about some just like overall development, but it's not specific to gross motor. And then let's just see, I'll go through maybe one more question, and then I'll pass it over to Lara so that we have enough time.
Yeah, with regards to Rosa's question, for me, an 1.5 hour nap is a great baby nap. And I probably would be just getting that baby up and feeding them and getting going. Like if a baby clearly wants to continue sleeping, so say this happened after, 30 to 45 minutes and it was like a really short nap, I absolutely would try to help that baby get back to sleep. If you could tell that they're very upset and they want to continue sleeping, I would try to help them. But an hour and a half nap is a very good nap, in my opinion. And so I would probably be just moving on and leaving well enough alone for that particular nap, and then continuing to practice the milestone during the day, or the movements during the day, as much as you can until they master it.
Okay, so one last question is, my 8-month-old has been rolling for a long time, but now that he is practicing rolling, he's getting stuck again on all fours in his crib. Any recommendations? 8 months old, so he's pushing up onto hands and knees. That's around the age that I'd expect him to do that. And so it sounds like he's just practicing this also while he's in his crib. Yeah, in terms of developmentally where he's at physically, I think this is like spot on. And then I would just like what you can do is practice going from hands and knees into like either back onto his tummy or into sitting, so that he isn't just stuck on hands and knees. But it sounds like he's figuring it out and he's just kind of in the process of connecting all the dots. Lara, what do you?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that, I did pediatric physio with my younger son because he was someone who was stuck in sitting. I don't think he would have crawled if we didn't go to pediatric physio, because he got into bum scooching, but he did eventually get into crawling. But yeah, what I was thinking of is, now hindsight is 2020, right? And you can look back and think through all the things that you did to get to where you were. And I think that, like in a case like this where a child's getting up onto all fours, if they're not upset and they're just exploring their crib, like I'd say, like, have at her, get up on all fours, do what you want in your sleep. If it's like, sometimes our kids, when they're going through like these exercises that you get from physio, like they are upset, it's okay for babies to be upset and to have your support while they're learning a new skill, while they're learning something new. And so, yeah, I think I'd be there and support and, talk through it, but doesn't mean you always have to move your child out of that position, because then they're just going to do it again, right? So, yeah, I don't know if that makes sense or if I'm just rambling, but you know what I mean. Anyway, I'm definitely a huge fan of pediatric physio. Like, honestly, my younger son didn't walk until like the day he turned 19 months. So late-ish to the walking game. But I really feel like it would have been delayed by so much more had we not have gotten into physio. So yeah, if you have any worries, I would 100% say, just ask, because they're so, so helpful.
Thank you. All right, why don't we hand it over to you and you can go through your stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't know that I should prepare slides. I didn't prepare.
Oh no, that's totally. I just had a couple of videos that I wanted to share. So.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, so Maegan asked me to pull out sort of some of the most common sleep questions that I'm asked on a regular basis. To be honest, I'm asked so many questions that it was hard to think of what are kind of my top 3 or 4 or 5. And I also have a tendency to talk for a little bit of a long amount of time. And so I pulled out 3 that I'm asked most often. But if you want to ask me questions, there is certainly places that you can do that. So I'm very active on Instagram and Facebook. I've got a full service website with 2 courses available. So, you can find me you can find me. I've also done like so many talks like this, and I have, you know, videos and webinars and whatnot. But the first question, and I'm sure people will pop their own questions in too. So I'll try to just go through these first three to kind of get the ball rolling, and then we'll open up the floor to what people want to ask. But the first one I wanted to answer is just why are babies notoriously bad sleepers, I guess? And, you know, I would say bad sleepers, but quote unquote, you know, why are babies up multiple times per night? So most families do experience their babies waking multiple times per night. I just want to make sure that we're clear. Only 16% of 6-month-old babies sleep through the night, 10.5 to 12 hours. And so, you know, it's very natural and normal for babies to wake frequently through the night. Often I hear from families whose babies wake up between 3 to 4 times a night, even upwards of 5, 6, 7 times per night. And all of that can be very natural and very normal. Babies sleep lightly for good reason. So babies are not born sleeping like adults do. If they did, we would all be sleeping, and obviously we're not. If you have a baby, you're probably up through the middle of the night. They sleep lightly because they need to be able to come out of sleep easily. So our babies are not born with the ability to regulate themselves physically or emotionally. So lots of you actually with the 0 to 3-month-old babies are still in that 4th trimester, where, you know, our babies are born earlier than any other mammal actually in the world. And so there's a lot of people who believe that our babies are born too early for their own good, essentially. And so when you're in that 4th trimester, you know, when baby was in the womb, they had every need met on demand. So, you know, temperature wasn't changing, hot or cold. They had food when they were hungry. They had, you know, when they were thirsty. All their needs were met just through your womb environment. And so when we come to the outside, baby now is responsible for cueing us to care for them. And babies are needing 100% of their regulation from their adult caregivers, so from the people on the outside. And so our babies sleep lightly so that they can cue us when they need care. And so that might be they need a diaper to be changed. They might need their milk. They might need to have, you know, some clothes taken off because they're too hot these days. All these different things are reasons why babies wake up at night. And then there are some babies who temperamentally will just be more challenging sleepers than others. So often people say, oh, is it something that I'm doing? Or, you know, am I the reason why my baby is waking up so much overnight? No, not necessarily. You know, your baby is supposed to wake up frequently through the middle of the night. They're relationship seeking, they're sensory seeking, they have physical and emotional needs to be met through cued care. And when you do meet those needs, you are actually building a healthy relationship and a secure attachment with your child. So, you know, babies will get sleep when and where they can. And certainly there are people who can help you make some changes if something that you're doing is no longer sustainable for your family. And I'll probably talk more about that as we continue. But I wanted you to know it's perfectly normal, especially for new babies, to want to sleep close to you, want to sleep on you, because you regulate their breathing, you regulate their body temperature, you are their safe person. This is evolutionary, and it's got a lot to do with survival instincts, and not as much to do with you're spoiling your baby or anything like that. So the second question that maybe comes along with that is, when will my baby sleep through the night? So everybody has a different definition around sleep through the night, okay? So some people believe that's actually 5 hours of consecutive sleep. Other people think of it more like 10.5 to 12 hours. There are babies who do sleep 10.5 to 12 hours through the night without being fed. Some of them very early on, some of them much, much later on. So when will my baby sleep through the night? The answer to this question is different for every baby and for every family. And just as, you know, Maegan was talking about, there are all these different developmental milestones and motor milestones and cognitive milestones that our babies go through as well that do disrupt their sleep. So it's not like, you know, you make sleep changes once, or you do some sleep training one time, or, you know, you change something about how you're responding in the middle of the night and suddenly your baby sleeps through the night forever and always. If you achieve a place where your baby does sleep through the night, great, awesome, they're sleeping through the night right now. But baby sleep is not linear. It changes. It has its ups and downs. But for the most part, with every week that passes, every month that passes, our baby's sleep does mature. So that by the time that they're 5 years old, most children then now sleep like adults do. So the average adult sleeps in 3 to 4 hour stretches actually, and puts two of those together to create their 6 to 8 hour nighttime sleep. And for toddlers, preschoolers, school-age children, overall, like, well, I said that baby sleep is not linear. It's not, it's like this. But on the end, it does actually start to go up over time, up until around age 5. What starts to happen at age 5 as well is that our children start to no longer need us for all of their regulation. So babies wake up through the night for physical needs to be met, as well as emotional needs to be met. So you can meet as many physical needs as you want to, but there will always be emotional needs that our children have that will come up through the middle of the night. So for example, self-regulation or self-soothing is not something that babies, toddlers, and preschoolers are capable of doing. They rely on parents to be able to calm them down in times of dysregulation. And times of dysregulation do come up through the middle of the night, right? So there might be a bad dream, might be a scary monster, might be too dark, it might be that they need to pee and they forget where the bathroom is. You know, there's all these different things that come up through your child's life. And now I can tell you that I have a 7-year-old, and he told me the other night, Mom, I said, why aren't you coming to my room anymore in the middle of the night? You used to always come to my room in the middle of the night, and now you never do. I said, when I have scary things now in the middle of the night, I don't need you anymore. I can handle those things on my own. So, you know, it's not something that we can rush. A lot of times when we think about development, you know, we want to help our children along, of course, but we have to be mindful that normal child development takes years. You know, we're in a relationship with these children for a lifetime. And so this time in their life when they're not sleeping, I know it can feel like forever, but it will be literally just a little blip on the timeline of their life and their relationship with you. Now, what I said is there are things you can do to make changes if something's no longer sustainable for you. And that kind of brings me to my third question. When is it appropriate to make sleep changes with a child? Or when is it appropriate to do some sleep training? And everybody has different definitions. When you hear the word sleep training, it is going to mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So that's something to be mindful of. There are as many different ways to sleep train a baby as there are to, I don't know, I don't have a good metaphor right now, but there are so many different ways people make changes. So I typically ask families to seek out my services or get help with their infants or toddlers when something that they are doing is no longer sustainable for their family as a unit. And for example, what might that mean? Perhaps you are waking 5 to 7 times per night. You're completely losing it. Your anxiety, your depression is through the roof as a result of how little you're sleeping, and your relationship is suffering. Okay, something has to change there. because what we need most is a healthy parent for this child. And in some cases, getting more sleep is going to help with that. Or perhaps we need to have a neutral third party come in and chat with your partner about different ways that they can help you through the middle of the night or support you the following day after you've been up a lot through the night. I mean, there are, so basically, to answer that question of when should I make sleep changes? When should I engage in some kind of sleep training? I mean, maybe it's never for you. Maybe you're just going to go with the flow. You're going to follow your baby's lead. You're going to respond with milk all through the middle of the night until, as long as you feel comfortable and until your baby needs it. And for other families, when they're doing that, they just can't function. Well, that would be a good time to reach out and get some help. Now, I will say I almost never recommend any form of sleep coaching, sleep shaping, sleep training before the 6-month mark. And the reason for that is you need to get to know your baby. That's one reason. And it's just too early, in my opinion, for anything to kind of stick. And I have seen families really try to go to like a set feeding time and set sleep times and scheduling very early on. And it is detrimental to their relationship with their child or their breastfeeding relationship. And it causes them a lot more stress than it's worth. Because babies don't produce melatonin in their own bodies until the 4-month mark, everything that happens from 0 to 4 months is really it's not indicative of how your child is going to continue to sleep. At 4 months, our children go through a major sleep regression or progression, which is where they're really reorganizing their sleep so that they can start to produce melatonin in their own bodies. And by the 5 to 6 month mark, things can look very different. Often I find things go one of two ways. Either baby naturally starts to sleep quite a lot better, or they're up as much as a newborn, and then okay, well, now I can probably make some changes and they will probably stick. But there are a lot of different things that our babies associate with sleep. Sleep associations are neither good nor bad. They are things that your baby associates with sleep and your family associates with sleep, and those things can help you along. One family's most cherished, treasured sleep association might be another family's horrible thing that they can't stand. So just keeping that in mind with regards to that question of, when is it appropriate to get some help? So you might be asked to change some of those things that your child associates with sleep. Maybe that's good. Maybe you're not ready to do that. No one can tell you that it's the right time to make sleep changes except for you. Okay, so shall we just open it up? I mean, I have other questions I could go through, but I think I should see what's here bubbling.
There's some in the Q&A box for you, Lara.
Oh, okay, cool. Open it up. Let's see. Okay, so if it's all right with everybody, I will just answer. So the first one is thoughts on crib bumpers to prevent baby from rolling or falling through the rungs. I don't recommend crib bumpers really at any age, to be honest, because I just think that they are one more thing in baby's crib that probably shouldn't be there. And I find them to be unnecessary. When babies are crib sleepers, they do explore the boundaries of their crib and they do get stuck in, they do bump into different places in their crib, and they start to find out where the boundaries are, and then those kinds of items are no longer really needed. And I will tell you, a crib bumper is going to help your child jump out of their crib as well when they get to that point. They will start to stack it up and throw one leg over the side, and then boom, you've got yourself a little step. So yeah, I tend to just stay away from those personally. And then the second question, my 8-month-old is sleeping through the night, but wakes between 5 to 5:45 every morning. He's taking 2 naps a day around 9 and 2, each 1 to 2 hours long, and bedtime is 6:30 to 7. Do you have any suggestions to get the wake up to move into the normal range? So yeah, Jody, so if you're thinking about your child being capable of really a 10.5 to 11 hour nighttime sleep, then if they're falling asleep at 6:30, it's more than appropriate for them to wake up at 5:30 a.m. to start the day. So, you know, you're saying they're falling asleep between 6:30 to 7, and then they're getting up between 5 and 5:45. So, you know, 7 to 5, okay, that's quite, you know, quite a short nighttime sleep. It's on the shorter side, but still kind of in the realm of normal. And there are babies who have lower sleep needs than others, lower sleep totals. For this baby, I would probably look at pushing everything from their day about 15 minutes later incrementally to get probably closer to, if you want the wake up to be after 6 a.m., then I think they need to be going to sleep probably between 7 to 7:30. But I wouldn't do that all at once. I'd push the naps back, push feeding times back, push bedtime back slowly, incrementally, and then encourage baby to still be at least in the dark until after 6 a.m. each day, whether that's in your arms or next to you or in their bed, whatever works for your family. But really signaling that it is still sleep time till after 6. All right, so, sorry, the questions, like when I answer the question, are you deleting them, Maegan, as I answer?
Missy maybe going through, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. No worries. So the next one is, how can I get my newborn's clock turned around? Right now, he is awake most of the night and sleeps a lot during the day. Very common for newborns to have their days and nights mixed step. So you're certainly not alone with that. My recommendation is to keep things really dark at night, to change diapers in the dark, low stimulus, not much talking, that kind of thing overnight. During the day, if you do need a night light, because you're feeding your newborn, you're changing their diaper most likely, I would use a night light with like a reddish kind of tone. It tends to disrupt sleep the least overnight, or sorry, the circadian rhythm the least overnight. And then in the morning, I would get baby up when they're up for the day, feed them near a window, get some natural light coming towards their body first thing in the morning and also later in the afternoon. That should help you to make the switch. But eventually they won't be doing that anymore. Now, the next person asks, breastfeeding to sleep, is that a sleep association and is that okay? So breastfeeding to sleep, yeah, definitely that's a thing that your baby associates with sleep if they're falling asleep at the breast. Breastfeeding to sleep is very natural and very normal. Breast milk contains tryptophan. It makes babies sleepy. It really is nature's kind of sleep-inducing drink, and lots of babies love to fall asleep at the breast. When babies fall asleep at the breast or on your chest, you know, they've got the sound of your heartbeat, the taste of the milk in their mouth, they've got all these different, all their senses are turned on, and so like it's really a natural way for them to want to go to sleep. Is it okay? It's totally okay. Now, if it is disrupting, for some babies, the way that they fall asleep at bedtime is what they look to recreate through the middle of the night. And so for some families, it's problematic if their baby's falling asleep at their breast and then they're breastfeeding multiple times through the night after that. But there are tons of families who have their babies fall asleep at the breast and they sleep 11 to 12 hours or through the night as a result after that. So yeah, it's really a personal choice, and I think you'll know when it's no longer working. All right, next. Someone wrote, what about sleep, ? But I don't know what that is in reference to. What are your thoughts on co-sleeping in a DockATot, snuggle me crib attached to the parent's bed? Our babies are recommended to sleep close to us in the same room, essentially, for at least the first 6 months of their life. And so I think for lots of families, crib attached to the parent's bed can work really well. Sorry, my family has just come home. They're 8 minutes early, and I guess my almost 4-year-old needed to use the bathroom. So if I seem distracted, it's because he's like out of the corner of my eye, but that's working at home with kids, right? So yeah, so I mean, I don't recommend DockATot and Snuggle Me are not approved sleep spaces. They are basically lounging spaces for your baby, and that's what they're approved for. If your child is sleeping in them and they're fully supervised and you're awake and you're watching them, then that's fine. I'm a mom of 2. I know that we go through times where you are literally just surviving, but I do have a duty to, from a liability perspective, to let you know that really those are not safe and approved sleep spaces for babies. I'm not judging you if that's what you're using, but just letting you know the information, and then you can make an informed choice. But crib attached to the parent's bed can be really kind of the best of both worlds, especially if you can pack the, if there's any cracks, you can pack them. Safe co-sleeping is a thing. You can look up the Safe Sleep 7 if you are co-sleeping with your baby. I would highly recommend that you do so as safely as possible. And you know, lots of people do co-sleep and they don't want to admit it. And I've worked with families who their baby's fallen asleep on their chest and they wake up to them rolling onto the floor. And so, you know, sleeping on a safe co-sleeping surface is a more safer alternative than that, for example. And then next question, this person submitted like, I think 3 or 4 questions. I just feel like maybe
we should do one more question, Lara, and then we can wrap it up. And then if there's questions that weren't answered, then we can maybe, you guys can reach out over email if there's like still pressing things that you want to know. For sure, yeah. Yeah, I will say, like, please, like if your questions are very specific to you, like if your questions are general, I probably have a resource already available. I have like 75 blogs and 70 something videos on Facebook. Like you probably have had your question answered somewhere. But if your question is really specific to you, you need specific sleep support, and you need to find someone to help your family and support your family in a one-to-one kind of way. But yeah, I guess there's a question of, do children really have a sleep routine? With my first child, I felt like she just wanted to sleep whenever she wanted, not really a pattern. To that, I will say that most children that I work with do get into routines. Yes, they follow awake times, they start to sleep on schedule. It's really up to the parents, though, like what works for your family, and to lead their child towards forming a routine. But our children really, child development experts will tell you, rhythm and predictability are things our kids need, and they continue to need that for the rest of their lives, essentially. And so finding, it doesn't have to be super strict to the minute or anything like that, but having a rhythm that you've created around times that your child can most expect that they will go to sleep, having routines that help lead them to sleep will, for the most part, decrease the stress, resistance, and power struggles around sleep times in the toddler and preschooler and school age years. So I would recommend getting into some kind of rhythm and routine. I think probably I could ask one more. There's 2 questions on why is it suggested that babies sleep in the same room as parents for the first couple months? How does it decrease SIDS? And then there's another question similar, the AAP suggests 6 months to 1 year. I believe that they retracted that to 1 year, actually. Jesse, they did come out with it 1 year. I could be wrong, maybe they went back to 1 year, but I remember they came out with saying it was 1 year expectation and then reduced it to 6 months. But I heard that babies that transition between 4 to 6 months sleep better and parents sleep better. So yeah, the recommendation of sharing the same room is really because you will hear things, you will see things observationally through your own senses. You will just react to things that your child is doing in their sleep that may or may not be unsafe. And so that is one of the reasons. Also, I believe it actually has something to do with
I know it has to do with sensory stuff, but scent even, like you're going to smell each other and kind of know what the other needs. But yeah, I could probably look into that in more detail. I haven't been asked that question in a really long time. And then, yeah, as far as like babies transition between 4 to 6 months sleeping better. So often for babies who breastfeed or chest feed, through the middle of the night, babies can smell breast milk up to 20 feet away. So if you are sleeping next to your breastfed baby, they are going to wake up more. Like, honestly, like, I don't know if there's any study that proves this, but I can tell you after years of qualitative research that it's true. So when babies sleep next to their milk, they smell it, they want to be up, having that milk to get back to sleep. And so moving them to their own separate sleep space can help decrease those night wakings and all that jazz. But whether or not there's a perfect time to make that transition, there's no perfect time. It's when the family is ready to make that transition. All right.
Thanks so much, Lara. There are some other questions in the chat that we didn't get a chance to answer. So what I can do is I can email a copy of these to Lara so she can see. And then, like she said, she probably has blog posts on them. So you can always check out her Facebook page. Also, you can follow Playworks Physio on Instagram and Facebook, and that's where we will announce any upcoming webinars that we have planned. Our next one that we have scheduled is for Monday, August 10th at 11 a.m., and that is with Safe Beginnings First Aid, Holly Choi, and she's going to be talking about baby and kid proofing your home, and I'm going to be talking about creating a safe play space for your little one. So that's the next one. I will send a follow-up email in the next day or two, just with the link for today's webinar, and then also with the sign-up link for the August 10th one. So thank you everybody for joining us this morning. And thank you, Lara,
Maegan, can I just let people know where they can find me as well?
Yeah,
I think I said already, but Facebook, Instagram. I also have a comprehensive sleep course that probably a lot of you would benefit from, which is created with 6 to 18-month-olds in mind. It's 4.5 hours worth of content. The most essential content that you need is about 2.5 hours broken down into 6 20 to 30-minute modules. So it's really easily digestible and just tons and tons and tons of resources there. So that's called Sleep from the Heart, and I would highly recommend that you check it out. But yeah, my website's heavyeyeshappyhearts.com, and I look forward to connecting with some of you. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks, everyone. Have a great
All right,
day.
take care. Bye.
Bye.